Tony Khan is reportedly constantly making last-minute AEW TV changes. WWE could be planning more TNA crossovers, and a SmackDown star could be heading to NXT. Stay tuned for the news. We're going to kick things off just now with some news about AEW. Now, coming off the back of AEW Double or Nothing, which was a pretty damn good show, I would say.
Top to bottom, a very strong show. They always do pay-per-view right.
Deliver massively on pay-per-views. You had Darby Allin swinging from the ceiling. You had Edge, unfortunately, Adam Copeland doing a big jump off of a cage. Find out more details about that earlier.
Jack Perry on fire.
It was a pretty damn good show, but a report from Brian Alvarez on the Wrestling Observer Figure 4 Weekly online message boards has shared some insight into the sort of backstage situation with AEW TV and pay-per-views at the moment. It's particularly taking a look at Double or Nothing. What did he say, Tom?
Yeah, he says Tony switched the script on the pay-per-view multiple times during the afternoon. Most people, not just the wrestlers, have no idea what they're doing until the day of the show, and sometimes not until an hour or so before the show.
Which is baffling. An hour before the show, that's like you're sitting there warming up on with Ross on the reaction stream.
That's it, and people still aren't quite sure what's going on. And he goes further on to say people are flown to towns and given nothing to do. Others are begged the day before the show to please get to the town so they can do something last minute. He knows what he wants to do for the pay-per-views. This is Tony Khan, although this often changes. But as far as week-to-week TV, everything is booked show to show, and that's the vibe that you get sometimes.
That is sometimes the vibe you get, and Alvarez continues and sort of compares it to early AEW and early WWE in 2019. He says, for the most part, he's incredibly difficult to get hold of, referring to Tony Khan. In some ways, it legitimately is more like 2019 WWE than it is 2019 AEW, where he was much easier to get hold of. He had very complex long-term storytelling. Many people had a good idea of what they were doing and where things were going. And often, most of the following week's entire Dynamite card was booked and announced before the previous week's Dynamite had even ended. He refers here to when Excalibur would run down the entire next week's card in like 30 seconds before they went out of the air. That was a particular highlight of the early Dynamites, especially
you got that down to a fine art.
Yeah, especially in that lockdown era when there was not much to keep you going for the next week. Excalibur's rundown of what's coming next was a good way to do it. But Brian Alvarez continues saying, it's night and day the changes, and people who work for the company in all roles from the wrestlers to the office talk about it all the time. It's not a great look in terms of how the backstage is working in AEW at the moment, but it is understandable in a sense of when a company gets to a certain level and a certain point and a lot of things are happening, it's going to get a little bit more chaotic. And Tony Khan is he's a workaholic. He's a bit like you, Tom. He's a workaholic.
He is, but also workaholics should be held to account in the sense that when WWE went through this stage of in the previous administration, when it was Raw being rewritten like hours before and scripts being written up, we talked about it and we called it out as this isn't the way to do it. And it's the same with AEW. If this is the case, you shouldn't be doing. You shouldn't be at this position where you're flying talent in and panicking about what to do with them when you've got all this time to put shows together. AEW have proved they can do pay-per-view really well, and the TV product there is a lot that will still needs to be least.
There's still some improvement. Yeah, there's still some improvement, and it is looking back at AEW in that 2019 to 2022 period, right when it was on fire, like. It was weekly TV. It was an appointment viewing, which it maybe hasn't been recently for some people. And maybe that is because of the way it's being booked. I think it is getting better. But it's just, it's weird to hear Double Nothing. Such a great show. The script was changed and ripped up.
But interestingly, when they were at their strongest in terms of creative, WWE were going through exactly what we've been talking about here, with scripts being written up hours before, and you could tell that on the show. There was a frantic nature to it, and now we're at a point where WWE seems to be booked long-term, in some storyline cases almost too long-term. So you have these long bits of downtime with stories, and now we're hearing that AEW have gone the opposite way, and they are throwing stuff together as it happens.
Absolutely. Well, Well, staying with AEW, we're going to move over to a little story about a New Japan star who's called out AEW for its booking, in particularly, and I quote, stupid AEW booking regarding the IWGP Championship. Now, a Forbidden Door Casino Battle Royal, or Gauntlet, I should say, will take place tonight to determine who will challenge for the AEW Championship at Forbidden Door next month. Now, this comes a few days after Jon Moxley defeated Takeshita in an IWGP Eliminator match, which many people expected Takeshita to win because it was an Eliminator match. Well, Jeff Cobb has called out AEW's treatment for the IWGP title on Twitter / X. What's he said, Tom?
Funny, New Japan guys have to go through a gauntlet match, but those dorks can just say what they want a shot at our biggest title and it gets granted. Even Stevie Wonder can see how stupid that is. I feel like this is I think we'll see Jeff Cobb in the gauntlet.
I think this is direct setup.
It's getting us to Jeff Cobb in the gauntlet, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's direct setup for him to be in there and maybe be the one that gets that shot. Like, he's been in AEW before. He made an appearance with the Inner Circle back in the day, but I think maybe there could be something there. But I mean, we've seen this with New Japan talent calling out Moxley winning that title and being like, you should be over here in Japan, not over in AEW. But I think it's going to be fun regardless what they do with the IWGP.
It is going to be fun regardless.
But Forbidden Door, talking about one Forbidden Door to another Forbidden Door, Tom, tell me a little bit about what's going on with Jordan Grace appearing on NXT and all that malarkey.
Well, this was brilliant. So we talked about this in our first news video this morning. Jordan Grace set to challenge Roxanne Perez for the for the women's title. Her Knockouts title not on the line at NXT Battleground. And PW insiders say we have only just begun, to quote the Carpenters, saying the belief among those we've spoken to is that there'll be some sort of NXT representation on future TNA events and programming as well. Although we haven't heard how much of that could be, whether it could be anyone beyond Roxanne Perez. Now, the thing is, in terms of whether we see TNA stars appearing on NXT programming, in the run-up to Battleground, the next set of TV tapings for TNA is after Battleground.
It's Battleground, yeah.
For TNA, it's after Battleground. Yeah. And so we won't see Roxanne Perez turning up on Impact this week, at least in the arena, not in the Impact Zone. What's she doing there, Maggle? But there's a chance that we might see Roxanne Perez maybe do a promo that they add into the product to do it that way. But then potentially, if this TNA WWE crossover has legs and they do want to do more crossovers and crossing the streams with TNA and NXT, then we could see it continue beyond Battleground.
It very well could. You know, going into the summer, both companies have a lot of events going on. I mean, the first one that jumps to everyone's head, and I've seen it on Twitter already all this morning, is Mr. Joe Hendry. Do you believe, Tom? I think a lot of Twitter wants to believe that he could be someone that benefits from this crossover because Clash at the Bloody Castle is coming up and it's in Glasgow and he's from Edinburgh and that's not that far from Glasgow. I think there's a lot of potential crossovers. We've seen Josh Alexander tweet out that if the door swings the other way, the gatekeeper of TNA is waiting. So I think there's a lot of things they could do with this. I would love to see some NXT appearances in TNA. But sticking with TNA Slammiversary is set to break a 10-year company record with Slammiversary. They're returning to Montreal, Quebec, Canada for the first time since 2011. The TNA press release says after the first 48 hours, more Slammiversary tickets have been sold than any other TNA show over the past 10 years. Slammiversary is set for Saturday, July 20th at the Verdun Auditorium. TNA executives confirmed today that they are looking to expand the arena setup, which will lead to additional Prime tickets for sale. That's a very exciting moment for TNA.
And it's some good news for TNA as well. I think there's been some rocky waters as they have changed the guard at the top. I feel like that's a really positive sign for growth with TNA. We saw decent tickets for Bound for Glory. We did see a dip as the B show sort of rolled in quite frequently, but Slammiversary is always one that you can mark in your calendar, and I think they're going to go big with that one, especially when we talk about this special relationship that's forming between WWE and TNA. There's opportunities that are endless to possibly possibly do something. When you consider the amount of ex-TNA talent that are in very strong positions within WWE currently.
Absolutely. I mean, look in the past. In 2012 at Slammiversary, we saw Christian Cage, at that time current WWE Intercontinental Champion, back in TNA for one night only. We recently, speculation by the way, we've seen a tease that AJ Styles is not getting another shot at the WWE Championship. And Nick Aldis was like, you're gonna have to work your way, pal. Could we see AJ Styles? I would love to see AJ Styles in TNA.
That would be rather fun.
One more night for a match at Slammiversary. But it seems like NXT and TNA, there's going to be some more going on in the future. NXT is that forbidden door hotbed, because not only do they get TNA talent on there, they get main roster talent as well. And Fightful's Corey Brennan has opened up and give a little bit of details about one main roster name that could be going there. One Tegan Knox, saying one main roster name who's been requested by NXT officials recently is Tegan Knox, with requests for Knox to be used in NXT dating back prior to the WWE draft. In speaking with NXT and WWE sources, we learned that there have been no immediate creative plans for Knox on the main roster, and is expected to have a run in NXT soon by talents and other sources with the brand. That's an exciting name to get in there.
And to the point where Tegan Knox's name was thrown about as Roxanne Perez's opponent for Battleground. Yeah. So when Jordan Grace turned up, it was an additional shock, because people on the inside didn't even see that one coming, because it was looking like it was going to be Tegan Knox. I think Tegan needs to do something. She was blighted with injury for a long time, so we never really got the motor going. And then when she moved to the main roster, we haven't really seen the best of her.
Yeah, so she even left WWE for a little bit and then came back thinking, right, this is the moment she's going to get that big push, and it didn't quite land.
Nothing.
So maybe that rejuvenation period in NXT that we've seen other talents do, Baron Corbin in particular, he had a big renaissance in NXT. Maybe it's what Tegan Knox needs.
NXT to main roster talent is a bit like stem cell treatment, in the sense that we don't know what it is, but they go in and some weird magic happens, and all of a sudden they come back and they're younger and more vibrant than ever. Yeah. So it has that power. And I think maybe
he's just cooking.
Chef Shawn Michaels is cooking up some healthy broth on Tuesday nights, and I think Tegan Knox will benefit from it.
Yeah, I think she's someone that will immediately make an impact in the division alongside Jordan Grace. NXT, as we've said, is cooking right now, but that is all we've got for you just now. More wrestling news will be on the channel when it breaks. Tom, have you got anything you'd like to plug? Have you got anything fun on the podcast feed?
Well, two things. I want to plug. First of all, the podcast feed brings you, well, they're getting everywhere at the moment. TNA star Steve Macklin is my guest on Cultaholic Island for a brand new episode of Desert Island Graps. We have a lovely chat with Steve Macklin about, this was before Jordan Grace turned up. So, of course, I don't ask about who he'd like to fight in WWE, because I didn't know it was happening. If I know,
you would have asked.
Badgered him with it, but it's a lovely chat all the same. Do check that out. And should you find yourself on Twitter or X today, you know what to do. @ Triple H. Hey, Paul, book Joe Hendry for Clash at the Castle, you coward. Let's go.
I believe.
The power of a village.
Wave your hands from side to side and say,
Triple H, you coward. Let's do it.
See you later.